Welcome to Smart Software with Smart Logic, a podcast where we talk about best practices in web and mobile software development with a focus on new and emerging technologies. My name is Justice Epen, and I'll be your host today. I'm a developer at Smart Logic, a Baltimore-based consulting company that has been building custom web and mobile software applications since 2005. From the team today, I've got my co-host, Eric Ostrich. Eric, say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Our second season of Smart Software is on Elixir internals. So we're going to be talking about the inner workings of Elixir and also the inner workings of various Elixir libraries. So today we're joined by the author of ElixirScript, Bryan Joseph. Say hi, Bryan.
Hey, how's it going?
Bryan, we're really glad to have you on the show today. I would love it if you could introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background on where you work, how you got started with Elixir, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, well, my name is Bryan Joseph. I am a software developer. I work at Revelry Labs, and I'm here in New Orleans, and from New Orleans native, and that's about the gist of it.
You also organize a little conference, right?
Yeah, me and two other people, we co-organized the Big Elixir conference, which our first year was last year in 2018, and we're doing it again in 2019. And your co-host is one of the keynote speakers.
Yep.
I would applaud if I knew how it would sound on the mic.
Okay, so let's jump right into talking a bit about ElixirScript. So, do you want to give us a brief background of what ElixirScript is and kind of what it does?
Sure. So ElixirScript is an attempt to compile Elixir to JavaScript so that you can run it in the web. Yeah, so basically it's an Elixir to JavaScript compiler, or at least it tries to be. It does the best it can.
I think a reasonable follow-up is, how did you come up with the idea? Why nobody had done this before? Why did you see a need? Talk to us about getting started writing ElixirScript.
Yeah, so there have been a few attempts in the Erlang world. I got the idea sometime in, 2015 maybe? I don't really remember at this point, but there was a conversation on the Elixir mailing list about possibly having an Elixir to JavaScript, something like similar to ClojureScript. And that's when I kind of got the idea of trying to do something. And so I had a couple of days off, and I just was looking at the JavaScript AST, and I was reading Chris McCord's book, Metaprogramming Elixir at the time, and that showed me how to get to the Elixir AST, and that's kind of how things started, just using those two pieces of information to try to turn one thing into another thing. Later on down the line, and a version of Erlang, which it might have been Erlang 19 or 20, there was a change. I think Jose made it basically to where you can have AST inside of the Beam files. And what that helped to do was make it so that basically you can have it to where you could use macros more easily, because the AST that is in the Beam files, the macros have already been expanded. And so you're just left with a somewhat basic Elixir AST. And so that's how the current version works now, is that it takes the AST out of the Beam files and tries to turn that into JavaScript, which allows you to do things like, it makes it easier to use Elixir libraries and packages off of Hex when you're turning your code into JavaScript.
So can you talk a little bit about the architecture of the project? Because I'm having a hard time maybe visualizing this.
Uh-huh.
Could you step us through maybe you write Elixir that's meant to be transpiled. What happens to it?
Right. So the way it works now is, let's see. Have y'all ever seen in a mix.exs file, there is in the project settings, there's an array of compilers. You might not see it in the default mix project, but you would see it in a Phoenix project. So ElixirScript is basically a mix compiler. And so what it does is when you do mix compile in the ElixirScript compiler is set up, there's some configuration with it, but basically it goes to like a certain path to like try to traverse down like and figure out like what all of the modules that you're using.
Mm.
And once it does that, it goes through and gets the AST for those modules and tries to convert those all into JavaScript. So at that point, it ends up in an output folder. So because of the way it works, I had to do like a Erlang compatibility layer in JavaScript because it's just converting the Elixir to JavaScript and not like Erlang itself. So that's actually where things kind of like stopped because that's the hard part, is basically doing the Erlang built-in functions in JavaScript.
Why is that like any different from, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So for instance, it depends on what JavaScript environment you're running in, which is problem number one. For instance, it's like when people think of JavaScript, you can either run it like in the web, or you can run it like using Node. So you have those two specific like cases. But for the web, it's like file I/O. Like, how do you do file I/O in the web? I have no idea. So that was like one of the things. There's also the processes stuff, which I never actually got around to like figuring out completely. I guess that should have been like something I said in the beginning. That's the big caveat. So yeah, it was just like environment issues. Like, how do things in Erlang translate to the JavaScript runtimes? Or
Okay. Eric?
So yeah, so I guess we kind of the last little bit of like processes kind of touches on like like some of the challenges that this might face. So like, yeah, like where do you even start with a project like this? You're trying to take all of Erlang, or I guess Elixir, and like convert it. So like, what's step one for something like this?
Oh, step one would be taking concepts in Elixir and translating those to concepts in JavaScript, which there's a lot of things like, the Erlang terms. There are a lot of things that do map one-to-one. Some things obviously don't, like bit strings. At one point I was using objects for like maps, but that doesn't work out because maps in Erlang and Elixir, they can have anything as a key. But with objects, they only can be numbers, strings, and symbols. So it ended up using maps like that were introduced in ES6. There were things like that. The other thing was pattern matching. There is not pattern matching in JavaScript. I think at some point they were talking about like implementing pattern matching in JavaScript, and they should still do that because that would be nice, but they haven't. And so that was just trying to go through like all of the cases that I can think of, or just finding all like the different types of patterns that you can do with pattern matching, and then try to like figure out how to implement that in JavaScript.
Yeah, because you can do some pretty crazy stuff with pattern matching. So like, did you figure out how to do like binary pattern matching in JavaScript, or is that just like if it sees it, it just goes and raises an error and says, sorry, get out?
No, I got all that to work.
Yeah, so how did you get the binary pattern matching? Is it just, yeah.
So let's see. It's been a while. It did take me a long time to implement bit strings. And this is going to be like wild speculation because it's been a while. But I think I match on like, so when a bit string is created in JavaScript, it goes through and it tries to like make like an actual like array. And I think in a pattern matching, I match against that array in some kind of way. But I did, so this was all separate from ElixirScript. Like I made the processes a node package and the pattern matching a node package so that if people wanted to, they could use it in JavaScript. And that's all open source. Let's say everything here is open source, obviously. So yeah, if somebody wanted to check it out and use it, they could.
Cool. Yeah, so I just found, it looks like it's called Tailored is the pattern matching for, that's cool.
Yeah.
So maybe if we want to zoom out just a little bit, I'm curious, like working on this project, and now you've had time away from it. If you were going to start over, Bryan, would you do anything differently with either the architecture or the high level sort of way that it works?
Yes. So I would probably work a lot harder on trying to figure out how to shoehorn. Well, if I did it right, it wouldn't be shoehorning in, but like making processes work, because I have a processes library. It works as far as I can tell, but I could never figure out the best way to add it in after the fact.
Mm.
And it's always driven me crazy. So yeah, that would be the first thing I would do. I think I'll work on the Erlang part a lot more, just getting all that working first, and then worry about putting Elixir on top of that and converting all that to JavaScript.
Good answer. Are there parts of ElixirScript that you think would be instructive to someone who was getting started on a new Elixir library?
Oh my, no. I do not think so. Like, that's probably not your typical Elixir library. Like, the only thing I can think of is maybe using it as an example of how to create a mixed compiler, but there's also better examples out there. In particular, the Elixir repo has some examples. That's basically what I used. No. Think something else.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. Don't use ElixirScript for inspiration. It's hilarious. Have you gotten to contribute any other libraries, and has that experience of contributing to open source in general influenced the way that you write code?
Yeah. So I contributed to a bunch of stuff, not hardcore, but it's been just little changes here and there I might find that I might want to help contribute back to that I know I could fix. I think it's helped me be more sympathetic, or I guess when people have issues on my repos, I guess depending on if they have an attitude or anything like that, I try not to take it personally. But usually people are pretty nice. That doesn't happen very often. It helps me understand both sides of the coin, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. Does Revelry help you at all with your open source contributions?
Yeah, so there are some packages I've created that we use at Revelry, and they've helped by contributing. If we use it in a project and they might need some changes, they'll help contribute there. We use a lot of open source projects inside of Revelry. We create a lot of open source projects, and we try to, just like I said, somebody might contribute back to a library I created. We do the same thing with other people's libraries. We do that all the time because basically we don't want to sit on a fork or anything like that. So if we can contribute something back, then we do it as soon as possible. So yeah, Revelry is all about open source.
Very cool.
All right, so now we'll get to the section that I think Justice would like to be called Stars and PRs.
Okay.
So just kind of talking about how did ElixirScript, so if you go to the GitHub for it, it's got 1,339 stars. So what was the journey to get there? How long did it take? What did you do to market this thing, to make people know about it?
That is a good question. I didn't know it was that high until recently. Let's see. I didn't try to market it hard, but I did post about it, either the mailing list or on the Elixir forum when that came around. So those are places I would post updates on my Twitter and use the right hashtag magic, or is it Elixir status. So I'll do a posting there. I did also speak at ElixirCon 2015 and at Lone Star Elixir, I think in 2017. So word kind of got around that way. I do know Jose mentioned me in ElixirScript in his keynote maybe a year or two ago when he made that change in Erlang that made it so that the Elixir AST was in the Beam files. So I think all of that kind of came together and made it popular, although I don't know if anybody's using it, which is why when I kind of slowed down on working on it and nobody noticed, I'm like, okay, I don't know how many people are using it, but it has a lot of stars. So
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes into the next question of if you know of anyone out there that might be using this in production. Is that exciting?
I think at this point it would be scary, but no, I don't know of anybody using it in production. And whenever this happened a couple of times, like somebody will say a thing about Elixir in JavaScript. I try to if I see it, I'll point them to ElixirScript because it does a lot of things. I think if people used it, that would help give more feedback to figure out what would make people use it. Is it useful now? How is it useful now? How is it not useful now? Those kind of things. Just any kind of feedback.
I genuinely hope someone listening to this comes out of the woodwork and admits to using it in production and hits you with some valuable feedback. Bryan, it sounds like you haven't really been working on it as much. You want to talk a little bit about the state of the project and where you see it going?
So I haven't been working on that part. I did do some work on that processes JavaScript library recently, and one of the things that drove me crazy with that was trying to figure out because it was running, and I made I made a scheduler, and it was basically just a loop, and it was doing its thing. It was working okay, but I wanted it to be a little better. So the change I made recently, in the last couple of months, made it to where you can plug in different kinds of schedulers, and the default one being one that uses request animation frame, and that helped tremendously. There's a demo that's on the repo, or maybe it's hidden somewhere in the documentation. I'll have to
I just loaded a link from the README that's got a whole bunch of changing numbers.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that the?
Yeah, so that made me happy. So basically, I've just been focusing on the pieces, and maybe that would be helpful to people. As far as where I see it going, I don't know. I'll let the community decide that.
So I think this was the last ElixirConf. It had been the year before, but there was talk of starting the Beam in WebAssembly. Have you looked at that at all or thought about it for something similar?
I've definitely looked at it and thought about it, and I ultimately think that is 1000% the way to go. But I also know that that's hard. So
yeah.
But no, I think that's the way to go. I think that is the way to go for a lot of languages is WebAssembly.
All right. I guess to start wrapping up a bit, let's talk about the Big Elixir. So what makes the Big Elixir different than every other con?
Well, first, it's in New Orleans and I'm here, so yay. But I'll also be at ElixirConf this year. I'm finally not afraid of flying. But it's one of the reasons I helped create the Big Elixir, because I was I don't like to fly, so I want people to come here. But I think I'm over the whole fear of flying thing. But what makes it unique is it's in New Orleans. We have the New Orleans atmosphere. We have themes every year, or at least we have for last year and for this year. And I am really excited for the theme this year. And we've been getting a lot of really good talks. And I think it's going to be a great conference. It's going to be so good. I can't wait.
Yeah. So I went last year, and one thing that I really liked was the Le Petit Theater. I think that was a really cool venue. They broadcast the New Orleans Elixir Wizard or Alchemist or whatever he is up on the wall. So that was cool. Yeah, it was a nice atmosphere, I think.
Yeah, It's a really nice place. We picked it because a friend of mine, Eric Norman, he had a closure conference there last year, earlier in the year. And he had it there, and it seemed like a really nice venue, so we decided to have it there as well. And it's going to be there again this year. And I think me and my co-organizers are wondering how the stage is going to look this year, because we're always doing it around the same time as the orchestra. And last year we were worried because they was going to open up the orchestra pit, and they didn't at the last minute. But this year, I think they are. So we'll see what happens. I want to bill it as the only conference with a pit. So we'll see what happens.
That's pretty amazing. Well, I guess we'll have to get play some classical music from Alphamat while everyone's giving talks to make the pit worth it, right? Idea. So I guess some basic stats about Big Elixir, when is it?
So it'll be November 7th and 8th. which is around Veterans Day. I think Veterans Day is like the next week, so it might be a good 3-day weekend. But yeah, November 7th and 8th in New Orleans, La Petite Theater again. And please come. It'll be very fun and very, very rewarding. And you'll meet a lot of nice people. You'll enjoy the culture of New Orleans. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I guess we teased at the theme or mentioned that there was a theme, but didn't actually say what it was, I think. So what is the theme for this year?
So the theme this year is Emerging Elixir. So we're just trying to see, like, where have people taken, Elixir, Erlang, and the Beam? Like, how far have they stretched it? Like, what are the limits? What are all the things it can do that maybe you wouldn't think about? Internally, we've been like trying to think of it like maybe almost kind of strange loopish, so like strange loop of Elixir conferences. So I think that's why I'm excited, because people have definitely, like, the submissions we've gotten based on the theme have been like pretty cool, and I think we're going to have a hard time figuring out which talks to bring in, but that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think this is going to air after the CFP is closed, unfortunately. So hopefully by the time this comes out, we're close or speakers have already been announced.
Guys, this is the tail end of our time here. I've really enjoyed the discussion. I'm really glad that we got to have this conversation, Bryan. I want to give you the opportunity, Bryan, to say, make any final requests or plugs, asks for the audience, links to social media, anything like that. Now's your opportunity.
Okay. I should prepare for this. So I would say I'm most active on Twitter. My handle is Bryan JOS, which is basically where I am everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, all those other things that exist. Plugs, I think, let's see. So I know a lot of people use another library of mine called Geo, which is like a geospatial library. And it's in pretty good shape, but I am wondering, like, who's out there is using it. Just for my, like, personal, I just want to know who's using it. Like, I know some companies, but I don't know if I can say it out loud, but I want them to talk so I can say it out loud. Let's see. I'll plug Revelry, which is a consultancy that I work for. We have offices in New Orleans, Chicago, kind of have one in Dallas, and mostly an Elixir shop, but we do a lot of things: web, IoT, mobile. So yeah, if you need something, let us know. I want to also I'll plug 2 boot camps. So one of them is Operation Spark, which is a coding boot camp in New Orleans, and they have a really good track record. I've worked with a lot of graduates there. I used to volunteer there some years ago, but I've worked with a lot of people who have graduated from there, and they've all been really awesome. And then I want to also plug Flatiron, which I've also worked with a lot of good people that have came from there. So I just want to give a shout out to those 2 coding boot camps.
Great. Bryan Joseph, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure. Well, once again, everybody, this has been Smart Software with Smart Logic, talking about Elixir internals. Join us next time for more conversation on Elixir and the Elixir libraries that you love. We're out.